This is Wei Hao at Direct Compact Solutions. Today I want to talk about date format. Before we dive into today's subject, let's do some pop quiz. On FileMaker Layout Object Inspector, we can specify the data format for a date field. We have two options to do it. We can select from a drop-down list as showing on this top image, or we can specify our own custom format as shown in this image. As you can see, the two format configuration that I have here, they appear to be the same format. 4 digits of year, 2 digits of month, and then 2 digits represent days. The question is, are there any differences between these two configurations? If you need more time to think about it, you can pause the video. I'll be revealing the answer in 3, 2, 1. So there is a difference. The values that you selected from the drop-down list actually changes with the region setting of your computer. So if I change my region setting from, in this case, English Canada to USA, the options shown in this drop-down list change as well. And the data that chose those options will have their format changed. Whereas if I specify a custom format like this will not change with your system's region setting. It will guarantee to be consistent across all users using them. Let's try another one. Let's say I set up two fields using those two options that we just saw in the previous question. And I try to enter a date value following the format that I specified there. Would it guarantee for that value to be accepted by the field? No. It's actually possible for the data to be rejected even if I follow the format specified in the Inspector tab. So when it comes to data format, there are actually two levels of data formats that govern different things in FileMaker. One layer is at the user level. The other layer is at the layout object level. Let's talk about the user level first. User level data format mostly governs the user input. This could be manual input done by real users through the user interface, or it could be scripted input that your script are trying to do using things like set fields or replace field content. And this governs both input under the browse mode as well as input under the find mode. Under browse mode, if you try to enter something that doesn't comply with the user level format, you're going to get an error message like this. And if you're trying to do the same thing under the find mode, you're going to get a similar error message. And in terms of what kind of fields are under the governance of these formats, so first of all, the date fields themselves, and then perhaps some of our surprises, if you have a text field that have a validation type selected here, they are going to be governed by the same format setting at the user level. We have control of the user level format to a certain degree. On the client side, this can be configured under the File Options Text tab, Data Entry section. So from here you can see we have three options here. First one being Always Use Current System Setting. When the Always Use Current System Settings option is selected, the user level format varies between user to user. It will be determined by that user's own system region setting. And if you want your solution to adapt itself to each individual user, this is a great option to choose. If you use the second option, Always Use Files Saved Setting, this will unify all the users' user level format to be the same as the saved setting of the file. So you might be wondering, what is the saved setting of a file? When you first create a FileMaker file, whatever the creator's system setting was will be inherited and stored with the FileMaker file. It can be modified, but is a little bit tricky. Before 19.5, we had to change our own device region setting to the target region that we want to convert it to. Then we save a copy of the FileMaker file as a clone. This will actually reset that clone's region setting to that region that my computer is currently set to. And then I'm going to need to use the FileMaker data migration tool to migrate data from the original file to this new file that has the target region setting. After 19.5 is slightly more streamlined with the new version of the data migration tool. So with this, I don't have to change my local computer's region setting just to change the target file's region. I can just save a copy of the file as a clone and use the FileMaker data migration tool with this new option -target locale and define the target region there, and that will help me set the target file to the target region. So a little bit more streamlined, a little bit easier to change. This option is really great for applications that should have a consistent data format across the board. The third option, ask whenever settings are different, simply let the user choose which option to use. So when you log in, if your own system format is different than the file saved format and this option is chosen, you're going to be presented with a dialog like this, and as the user, you have the option to choose, am I going to be using my own system setting or I'm going to be using the file saved setting. My personal opinion is don't use this option because it's just going to confuse the user. Most users have no idea what file setting or system settings mean. So I would say just go with one of the two options based on whether you want the user level format to adapt based on each user system setting or you want them to be unified across the board. Notice that we have been emphasizing that all of these are about the client side. So this is because FileMaker server always uses the file's saved format, regardless of which option that you chose up here. So this is kind of a gotcha. We'll talk about that in the gotcha and best practice section of this video. After talking about the user level format, which mostly governs the input, let's take a look at the layout object level format. The layout object level format mostly governs the output of the system. For example, on the layout, if a layout object format is different from the user level format, well, the layout object format will be used when displaying. However, if you click into the field trying to enter some data, you'll see that the format changes to the user level format. Another place where the layout object level format might take effect is when we're trying to export records. This is the export dialog that you see when you're trying to export records. There's a checkbox down here that allows you to choose, do you want to apply current layout's data format to the exported data or not? If you have this option checked, well, it will use the layout object level format. So your exported data will have the same format as what's shown on the layout. However, if you uncheck this option, the behavior is a little bit counterintuitive. I think most people would expect if you uncheck this option, instead of using the layout object level format, you will just use the user level format. That's not the case. It's actually going to use the file saved setting. So this could be a little bit awkward if, say, your file was created by a USA developer, but is used by a Canadian user whose system setting is different from the file saved setting. In the file option, you chose to always use the user system setting. So from the user's perspective, when they're entering data, everything works fine with their own regional format. But then when they're exporting data, if they uncheck that option, it will always use the file save setting, which is going to be the USA setting. If you actually want to export under the user format, you need to do a little bit extra work. You actually want to create a layout under the context of export. So let's say you're trying to create something that export company records. You want to create a layout under the company table. And then you want to add all the fields you want to export, or even just all the fields of this table to that layout. And you want to leave the layout object level format untouched because by default, it's going to use the user level format. And then you use export records from there, and you check the apply current layouts data format option. This is going to allow you to export records using the user level format. You can probably script all this so that from the user's perspective, it's just a matter of clicking a button. But just keep that in mind, when you uncheck that option, it doesn't use the user level format, it uses the file saved setting. And as the name suggested, this is configured at the layout object level. If you go to the inspector, go to the rightmost tab, the data tab, down here under data formatting, you will be able to specify the layout object format. As mentioned above, if you don't touch this, by default, it's going to be the same as the user level format. However, this one can be modified. Going back to our very first pop quiz, you can choose from a predefined list. From that list, some of the values don't change across regions, but some of them do, like the second and third value in the list that we show in the first pop quiz. And you can also specify a custom format here, which of course will allow it to be consistent across regions. So now that we understand the two levels of format exist in the system and what kind of things they govern, let's look at some gotchas and best practices when dealing with data format. The first one is a best practice. You want to identify which region your users are going to be using your application before or during the project instead of afterwards. This will allow you to identify which format is appropriate for your input and for your output, and this gives you the information you need to configure either your user level format or your layout object level format to the appropriate configuration. The second one is a gotcha. This is the one we mentioned earlier about server-side user level format. So when you are using server-side scripts and you know that your application might be used under multiple regions, be really careful about those scripts. As we already established, server will always use the file saved setting regardless of what you choose under the file options. So when you're performing a find, if you enter the search criteria in the wrong format, which we do sometimes, which is hard-coded as a piece of text instead of using an actual date function, if that is in the wrong format, you don't get an error 401, which is no record found. You actually get error 400, which is find criteria are empty. The difference between the two is that if you get error 401, you'll be landed on an empty found set, which will make it less likely for screw up to happen afterwards. However, in this case, you get an error 400, which lands you on your original found set, and this is really dangerous. So let's say you have a daily server-side schedule that deletes records older than a specific date. And you inherited this system from some developer from a different region, so the file saved setting is actually different from your own, and that developer used hard-coded date in there in the wrong format. And let's say you have a perform find followed by a delete all records. In this case, the perform find will yield error 400 and land you on the full record set. So the delete all records might actually accidentally delete every single records in your table. This is an example of why you need to be really careful working with server-side scripts when dealing with applications that can be used across regions. That brings me to the third point in here, which is a best practice. You want to use functions like date or some of the get functions to replace hard-coded date as a piece of text. For example, instead of writing this as the search criteria in your script, you want to write it this way instead. With the date function, it will guarantee to use whatever format that's appropriate and it will be accepted by the system. So you don't have to worry about the data format as you are building your business logic. That is the end of this video. I hope you enjoy it. Don't forget to hit the likes button and subscribe to our channel. I'll see you in the next video.